In an effort to close a $457.5 million budget, the mayor is calling for 26 furlough days over the year for all city workers who are not getting a cost of living raise as a part of their contract, and 36 furlough days for employees who are scheduled to get raises. These are unpaid days off. And the news report that I heard on the radio this morning talked about something else Villaraigosa said, that he wouldn't have to do this, all of these furlough days, if the unions would simply agree to employees paying more for their health care, a larger health care contribution, and also contribute more to their pension plans. But of course, no. It doesn't matter how bad the economy is or how broke the city is, keep paying us. The government, I'm talking city government, county government, state and federal government, all of it depends on taxpayer money to pay off these thugs. So, once again, we the people need to make a few demands. And that is that we get rid of these unions. You offer somebody a job with the city of Los Angeles, the county of Orange, the state of California, or the federal government, and you tell prospective employees, hey, this is what the job pays. And here's a schedule for possible raises in the future. And here's what you have to pay for health care. And if you want a 401k, here's what you have to pay. There are no pensions. And that's it. Do you want the job or don't you? If you don't want the job, there's somebody else who does. Government does not need, especially in this economy, government does not need to offer all of these perks and gimmicks and sweet deals to get employees. I wish I still had that letter. A 6-page letter I wrote to the County of Orange after I left, and I reported everybody that I saw sitting around wasting time while everybody was supposedly on overtime because there was a backlog. And you might remember, I think I talked about this before, my supervisor, a woman, a Hispanic woman, told me that I had to slow down. We were all working overtime. I think we were doing 48 hours a week, overtime because of the backlog. And so I was cranking it out. I knew what I was doing. I would make updates to the maps on the computer and then take all the data and information and put it in a file and send it over to the woman who checked all the work. And she had an enormous pile on her desk because I was working fast. Not inefficiently, not in a sloppy way, but just quickly. I was getting work done. What was she doing? Well, she was sitting on her obese behind. I almost said something else. I don't want to be real vulgar here, but she was big and slow and lazy, sitting back on her stool at her desk, on the phone, babysitting her children. She was close friends with the supervisor. We had, I don't know, maybe 12 people in the office there. We had 3 phones at various places. She had one of the phones at her desk. And she would sit there and talk to her children all day. And I would hear things like, no, I told you, let your brother watch TV until noon, and then you get to watch what you want after noon. Now, she's trying to raise her kids, I understand that, but this is not what you do at a job. You don't babysit your children by phone while you're getting paid by the taxpayers. Oh my God, I couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand it. But to keep myself sane, I had to look away and keep working. I realized that I was getting an education here in computer drafting, and so I would stay there as long as I could possibly handle it and then take that experience and go get a job in the private sector again. There was a black guy, and you have to picture this. We all sat in a large open room with large drafting tables. That was the desk. And, of course, we didn't do any drafting anymore. We had the computer there and the computer keyboard and the mouse, and we were doing all of the drafting for these maps is done on computers now. So there's this big black guy, very nice guy. He trained me, gave me my first bits of information to get started. Again, very nice guy, very likable guy. His desk was situated in such a way that his computer screen could be seen by the department head. These were the old big boxes, the CRT screens, and we all had large 21-inch, huge computer screens. The department head's office, again, a very nice guy, in his late 50s, early 60s. He's about ready to retire. And his office has a huge picture window, and you could sit at his desk and see what this black guy was doing on his computer. All you had to do was look up. And I used to walk behind the black guy's desk. We'll call him Larry, so we can have a name. That's not his real name. So I'd walk behind Larry's desk to go to the bathroom, to get to some files, and often, not just a couple of times, often, day after day, he was sitting on his computer playing solitaire. You know, Windows Solitaire with the playing cards. And this guy Larry is sitting back, very comfortable. One arm is folded under his chest, the other arm stretched out to reach for the mouse. And he's got the cursor moving those cards around, playing solitaire for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour. I would grab a piece of newspaper, head to the bathroom. I'd be there in 15 minutes, wash my hands, come back in. He's still playing. The department head is in his office where he can see all of this, just sitting there, ignoring it. We were allowed to have a portable cassette player or a CD player with headphones, and so Larry is sitting there with his headphones on, enjoying some music and playing solitaire. So there was one guy in this department that I got kind of close to. He was a decent guy, he worked hard, and we would talk occasionally about the things that went on in this office. And I asked him one day, my friend, call him Dave, I asked Dave, what is it about Larry? He can sit there and play solitaire all day. And Dave told me the story about Larry. And when I heard this, it was the day that I decided to begin looking for real work once again, a real job with a real company that was private sector and not union. He said that one day Larry was goofing off, doing something, he wasn't doing his work. He was making a lot of personal phone calls, and his work habits were terrible. So after a few warnings, they took him into the department head's office and wrote him up. What do you think he did? Larry went out and got himself a civil rights attorney, and that was it. Dave told me that supervisors and the department heads let him do whatever he wants now. So Larry can sit there and play solitaire on the taxpayer dime, and nobody does anything about it. There's your protected union worker right there. There was another day. I was very busy working, and I was involved in something that it took a substantial amount of time to get the job done. I'd work on different files. Some files would take 15 minutes. Other files would take 3 or 4 hours. So I was involved in one of those. My break time was usually about 10:15. So I'm sitting there, and I decided, I'm going to work through the break because I do not want to interrupt myself and try and come back and figure out where I left off. I just keep working. So then the day progresses. I take lunch. I come back. I'm working on some other stuff. And then afternoon break time is around 2:30, 3, whatever it was. And instead of 20 minutes, I took a little over half an hour because I'm kind of, relaxing because I took no break this morning. I came from a job in the private sector where you come in when you want. I would usually show up between 5 and 6 in the morning. You take off when you want. I would usually call it a day, around 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And then if you got busy, if there was a deadline, you'd work longer. You take lunch if you want. You go out to lunch. 2-hour lunch on Friday, no problem. or you take a 15-minute lunch and come back, whatever you want. You bill the time you're working. So if you got some personal business you got to take care of, you want to work a 4 or 5 hour day, no problem. But still, working for the government at the county offices, I would, stick to it pretty close. But that day, I skipped my morning break and I took a bit longer break in the afternoon. And boy, my supervisor came down on me. She called me aside and she took me into the file area, and everybody knew, oh, she's talking to him now because they're in the file area. It was all about keeping you in line and showing you who's boss and making sure the rest of the people in the department could see that she was taking control. And she asked me, where were you? And I said, well, I just skipped my break this morning because I was busy working. And then I took a little bit longer break in the afternoon. No big deal. Oh, you can't do that. This is a schedule. You've got to stick to the schedule. And if you don't stick to the... Meanwhile, you guessed it, Larry is playing solitaire on the computer. And I looked at her. And I said something she knew the jig was up. And she gave me a little more latitude. But she knew that I knew what was going on, and that I was only going to be around for a short time. And I also knew that in a government job like that, well, any job, there is no payoff in discussing specific persons by name. So I looked at my supervisor and I said, with all the crap that goes on in your department, and you and I both know what we're talking about, you would dare to ask me about the break time. That I actually ended up taking less time. Instead of 40 minutes, I probably took 30 or 35. And you're going to bust my chops for that. While all these people in this department are wasting gads of time. And she just sat there looking at me. And I said, I'm going to take my morning break when I'm supposed to. And I'm going to take my afternoon break when I'm supposed to. But please don't interrupt my workday with this trivial nonsense when you have people wasting enormous amounts of time. One more story about working a union job for the government. I could go on and on. I could do 2 hours. When I got a job with a private sector engineering company, I went to my supervisor, and I was very professional. I had decided that I was going to leave on a positive note, so not my supervisor, I went to the department head, and I asked him if he had a minute. He said yes, and I closed the door. And he went, uh-oh. And I said, I'm going to be leaving my job here, and I want to give my 2 weeks' notice. And he said, well, we're sorry to see you go. You're a very productive worker. And I said, yeah, well, I got a great opportunity with a private firm, and I'm going to go there. So to make a long story short, I showed up on the first day of my 2 weeks before leaving, and I checked in. I think the way it went, I checked in with the department head, and he said, yes, I'll have Sally. I'm just going to use that name. I'll have your supervisor, Sally, bring some work over to you. And I waited there at my desk for half an hour, an hour. I read the entire newspaper. People are working, people are doing things, and nothing is coming over to me. And I went over to Sally's desk, and I said, the department head told me you'd bring some work over. Oh, yes, I will. Just give me another couple of minutes. Okay, so I go over back to my desk and read the paper some more, put on some music in the headphones. Nothing. I went through the whole day and did nothing, and got paid for it. Second day, I come in, I talk to the department head, and I said, I never got any work yesterday. I just sat there on my ass the whole freaking day. Why don't you see if somebody can give me some work, because I'm going to be here 2 weeks. I might as well do some work. 1, 2, 3 hours go by, nothing. So I packed up my briefcase, I threw the newspaper in the trash, and I walked to the department head. I stepped inside his doorway, and I said, I tried to do this professionally. I tried to give you people the benefit of the doubt so we didn't have to make this ugly. but this department is a disaster. I haven't worked in a day and a half. I quit. I'm leaving today. And he told me, you can't just walk out. We have to do the paperwork, and security has to come over. And I said, you watch me. You better get those people here, whatever paperwork. You got 10 minutes because my patience is gone. And inside of 10 minutes, they had the personnel person came over with the paperwork. You got to sign this and sign here and all of this nonsense about you're not being paid here anymore. And the security came over to look over my desk area and take a peek inside my briefcase. No big deal. There's nothing to steal there. And then I left. And when I got home, I was furious. And I called the owner of the company that I was going to work for, and I said, well, they don't want me to work there for 2 weeks. And he goes, great, we've got plenty of work. Come on over tomorrow morning. So that worked out fine. But I waited, 2 or 3 weeks before I wrote my letter to the County of Orange. I copied all the department heads. I copied all the supervisors. I copied all of the people on the Board of Supervisors, the Orange County Board of Supervisors. And it was about, 2 or 3 days later, and I sent them all registered mail. So I knew everyone was going to get a copy of my letter. And 2 or 3 days after I mailed them out, I got a call from Dave. That was my friend there. And Dave said, did you send your letter? And I said, yeah. He's talking very quietly because he's on the office phone. And I said, yeah, I sent it out a couple of days ago. And he said, well, it must have gotten here today because all of the supervisors, all of the department heads have been called into a closed-door meeting with the head guy there in the office. And I don't know if any real changes would ever happen, but I told everything. 6 pages. And I did it very constructively. I did it without being angry. That's why I waited a couple of weeks, because I didn't want to write the letter in anger. And it was a great letter. It was very factual. And basically, the whole point of writing the letter was to say, hey, I'm a good worker. I'm not the best ever. I'm not the worst. But I'm certainly a good worker. And such a good worker, I was told to slow down. We're working under a backlog. We're working overtime. And I'm told to slow down. Doesn't make any sense. So here's all this information. If you want to look into this, you can make the department run better. But as for me, I'm out of here. Again, I could go on and on. The reason I tell you all these stories is because when you talk about the government workers in Wisconsin, or you talk about the government workers in the county of Los Angeles, or the city of Los Angeles, or the state of California, or the federal government, look, if it's as bad as it is here, on the county level, I can't imagine how much waste there is on the federal level. Hundreds of thousands of employees babysitting their children on the phone. Are you kidding me? Of course it happens. And it's not bad enough that all this waste is going on. It's not bad enough that people are lazy and they put in about 3 hours worth of work and get paid for 8. And it's not bad enough that you can't fire them for playing solitaire all day because it's time to get a civil rights attorney. And it's not bad enough that few of these people could ever survive a private sector job. In fact, the owner of the engineering firm looked at me and he said, you got out just in time. Most private sector companies look at potential workers who are coming from a government job as being unemployable after just a few years. So anyway, all of this inefficiency and laziness and sloth that is going on in government jobs, that's not enough. They have to be protected by unions. What does this tell you about unions? They're not making the workplace safer for government workers. They're not limiting overtime without being paid for overtime. No, They're protecting lazy workers. They're protecting inefficient workers. They're protecting workers who are babysitting their children all day long from work while they're getting paid. I've been there. I've seen it. Sure, it's a relatively small scale, but if it's that bad, that wasteful on the county level, how bad must it be in California on the state level? And how horrible, how wasteful, how inefficient must it be on the federal level? It's time to get rid of unions for all government workers. All of them. And I realize much of the federal government is not unionized, but the air traffic controllers are, and they're sleeping on the job. Jay Leno last night. Great joke, and I'm not even a big Jay Leno fan. He gets on stage, he stretches, and he goes, "Oh, I got to tell you, I feel so well rested. I slept like an air traffic controller last night." Anyway, I'll take a break here. That's my deal on unions and government workers. We'll be right back with more of the Thursday show right after this.
You're listening to The Jimmy Z Show.